Programme, a news report from Moira Stuart.
Good morning. General Norman Schwarzkopf, the commander of the Allied forces in the Gulf, announced a few minutes ago that he has reached full agreement with Iraq during ceasefire talks in southern Iraq. More news at 1 o'clock.
Well, in 25 minutes here on BBC1, practical help on handling imperial and metric measures in A Way with Numbers. Now, Chris Serle with another step up to word power.
Hello and welcome to Wordpower. This is going to be the last of our 3 reading specials. We're going to unlock the final set of secret methods which help us become really effective at reading. Like Kathleen Dixon, unraveling the mysteries of the highway code. William Henry, wondering whether we can believe what we read in the papers. And Mary Swami, discovering something rather frightening in the public library. And I'm going to be talking to Janet Crawley and Joe Ward. But first, let me tell you what else we're offering in this programme. It comes down to 4 basic skills, all of which are glaringly obvious when we hear them, but take a bit of thinking about to get them firmly planted in our minds. We'll go over them in detail, but here are the 4 things to think about. First of all, think about what to read. We'll show you how to choose the right stuff. Then there are the ways of reading. We've looked at before, and we'll do it again briefly in this programme. Reading between the lines to get the real meaning out of what we're reading. And finally, being critical, which means not taking things at their face value. You don't have to believe everything you read. So let's start with how we choose what to read. Mary Swami started working on her reading and writing 3 years ago, and we filmed her visiting her local public library with her tutor, Phyllis Thompson. There's enough reading there to last several lifetimes.
Right, we're here then.
Yeah, well, like the books.
Yes, we'll have to really be selective about what we look for, otherwise we'll be here all day. What do you want to look at first?
Horrors.
Right, I think they're just over there, so let's go across. Here we are. Now, can you see anything?
Yeah,
Oh, this one, Brett Rutherford.
Yeah, I mainly go for the picture.
Have you read any of Brett Rutherford before?
No.
So this one
No.
is. Sometimes they tell you what the story's about on the back. Should we have a look, see what's on the back? Do you have a look, see there's another?
I don't think this one.
James Herbert.
Creepier than that
Oh,
one by the cover.
Have you thought of any other types of stories that you might be interested in?
Not
Any
really,
like
but
this? Have you heard of Geoffrey Archer?
yes, I've heard of him, but I've never actually read any of his books.
What have you heard about him?
Well, more seen him on the telly than actually.
Let's just have a look on the inside to see if it says... Oh, it's short stories. I didn't realise that, actually. It's a collection of short stories.
Yes. I prefer short stories to long stories.
Right, so in fact, one of the stories about murder, the others, it varies, actually. So that might be an interesting one, because they'll introduce you to different types of story. So at least you've got 2 to be going by. You've got your horror,
Yeah.
and then Geoffrey Archer.
And this one.
Yeah.
And her first job's going to be to tell the difference between them. Seriously, we meet more of Phyllis Thompson's students later in the programme, but in fact that is one of the best ways of deciding what to read, choosing something we'll really enjoy reading. But whatever our reason for reading, let me give you some tips which will help when you're confronted by a wall of reading material in a library or a bookshop. I've got a couple of books here to show you. Well, this one, I suppose, couldn't be more obvious. There's a picture of a garden, and in case you're still in any doubt, it's called Creating Small Gardens. Well, you know exactly where we are. Supposing, as I know there are several books on this sort of theme, you might get a bit more information from the blurb inside the front cover, deliberately designed to make you want to read it. If you still want to know what's going on, then you might turn to the contents page and see if it's a book for you. And here you have a very good list of subject headings: the corridor, herb garden, the informal garden, the country house garden, and so on. And of course, a book like this is going to be full of super pictures. There's a very nice one. So there you are, and that you can make up your own mind about that book from the information like that. Here's another book. Again, pretty obvious. It's wacky, nice picture on the cover. Maureen Lipman, obviously. How was it for you? Home thoughts from abroad. Hilarious options. Look no further. It's either up your street or it isn't. So that's a nice, easy one to choose. Another one, a mystery. The Double Man. A chillingly authentic thriller by two of America's top senators. Well, again, that gives you all the information. Gary Hart and William S. Cohen. All the information you need to make the choice. If you still want to know more, then on a paperback, look on the back. There you are. Now, one of the greatest things about reading is that we can pick up a book, read a page or two, put it down, have a cup of tea, pick up another one, and so on. There's nobody to force us to read it from beginning to end, and it's better than watching TV in that sense, because we can go at our own speed. And when you've chosen, you'll need to give a moment's thought to the best way to read it. Now, as we've seen in previous programs, it's pretty straightforward if you're clear about your reason for reading. You might be scanning fast for particular bits of information. You might be skimming quickly to get the general idea. Light reading is for novels, letters and the like. Or there's careful reading if it's important. In practice, we use a mixture of all of them, going faster for a general idea and slower if we need to be more careful. Careful reading can be very time-consuming, so it's especially important to be clear about what we want to get from it. Kathleen Dixon has been working on her reading for 6 years, and careful was certainly the word for her in that agonizing time just before her driving test.
So you'd like us to look at the highway code today, Kathleen?
Yeah.
Again?
Yes. Well, I've got a test in a few weeks, so I've got to do it
This time round?
this time round.
Which bit do you think we should look at today, then?
The reversing.
Okay. Do you like to read it first, and then we'll think about the main points that
Right.
you need to remember?
Before you reverse, make sure that there are no pedestrians, particularly children, or obstructions in the road behind you. Be especially careful about the blind area behind you. That is the part of the road which you can't see.
What I'm going to suggest we do now is that you imagine that you're sitting in your car, about to do your reverse.
Yes.
And we're going to read it again and pick out the main points. So I'm going to give you the pen, and you can... We'll stop of yourself and to highlight the bits that are important,
Right.
okay?
Make sure there are no pedestrians.
Right, so what's the key word there?
Pedestrians.
Right. Okay, so make sure there are no pedestrians.
Particularly children or
Well, which of those two words do we need to highlight? Particularly children?
children.
Right. Shall we do that then? Yeah.
Be especially careful about the blind area.
Okay, and in that sentence, can you think which of them?
Blind area.
That's right. Okay, so let's just think about the bits that we've highlighted then.
Kathleen Dixon preparing for her driving test. Now, using a highlighter like that can help by making the points really clear and easy to remember. And there are other ways. We can underline key phrases or put a line round them. I don't like doing that to books because somebody else might want to read them. So then I'd make a photocopy and mark that. So that's our second winning technique, using the kind of reading that suits our purpose. Now, although the highway code is not an easy read, it is straightforward facts and rules. But with some reading, there are hidden meanings, and that brings us to our third technique. It's called reading between the lines. And this is how we can make sure we get all the meaning out of a piece of writing. Here's a seemingly simple sentence, but what does it mean to you? He turned up the collar of his coat and pulled on his gloves. Well, the words are about a man and his clothes, obviously, but can we build a clearer picture in our minds than the words suggest by themselves? Have a look at it for a second. What about the weather, for example? It must be cold outside. And what kind of man is he? Is he just cold? Or maybe he doesn't want to be recognized. So is he a detective or a criminal or what? We could go on finding hidden meanings in that sentence, and in the end, we'd have a whole story of our own. Now then, The Motherland Calls is a collection of writing by people who came over from the West Indies. One of the writers is William Henry, who astonishingly only started reading and writing from scratch 5 years ago. We met him doing some reading between the lines on another of the articles in the book with his tutor, Phyllis Thompson.
Well, when we landed, everybody was happy, and I was happy. I was glad, but I was more excited with the white snow.
You get the impression from reading that Alberta was really very, very happy, don't we?
Yes,
because she mentions the word twice.
Yes, that means you're very happy about it.
And then the odd thing is that in the middle of all of that, over the page, she talks about her excitement with the white snow.
That's right. Because she never seen snow before. Well, I say something in the book. What about the same thing with the weather?
Well, let's have a look at yours then.
Yes. There is nothing I dislike in Britain, but there is sun all the time in Jamaica.
Right, so you've said yours a little bit different from Alberta, isn't she? Because she's talked about how happy she is to be in the country. And you're probably saying the same thing here when you say there's nothing you dislike.
Yes. It is the same, but in different way.
Right. But then you go on to talk about something that she hasn't done. She's talked about the snow.
Yes.
And then you mention this little bit here. I think it's quite interesting. There's...
There is sun all the time in Jamaica.
You've got two clauses in the sentence. First of all, you say that there's nothing you dislike in Britain.
That's right.
But really, you're also saying that there is one thing that you dislike in Britain.
Yes, it's the cold.
That's right.
Yes.
So in fact, what you're doing is saying a whole lot of things there when you say, but there's a sun all the time in Jamaica, because you're asking your readers to think about all the kind of things you can do in the sunshine.
In the sunshine,
As William and Phyllis were saying, what a writer doesn't say is often just as important as what he or she does say. Well, here's the last third of a poem called Breakfast by Jacques Prévert. He got up, he put his hat upon his head, he put his raincoat on because it was raining, and he left without a word, without a look at me. And I took my head in my hand and I cried.